Out of 5 dentists recommend the morning meeting for their patients who chew gum. Thank you for joining. This is the morning meeting. Dan, Sean, and I are going to run through what's happening today on the presidential campaign trail. Then we'll talk about it. Gab, 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 yak, 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 yak. Pick a little, talk a little, pick a little, talk a little, and then we'll take your questions. This is a platform for everyone. It is not like a lot of media where it's just for liberals or just for conservatives. So if you're in the conversation, great. Conservatives, we're not going to talk at all about the Joe Biden thing because he's explained it. Just kidding. We will be talking about it. If you're watching on YouTube, welcome. We like having you watch there, live or recorded. If you go into the comments section, please, peace, love, and understanding. This is not a platform for attacks. If you're watching here on two-way, it's a great opportunity. All Americans, what do they put on their bucket list? To talk to Dan and Sean. So if you want to ask a question, please raise your electronic hand. We'll be getting to your questions before too long after I run through the daybook. And then, as I said, we kick things around a bit. The vice president is all over the place today. She leaves Washington at the early-ish hour of 10:10. Raleigh, North Carolina event at 12:30. Then she goes to Harrisburg, event there at 4:35. Again, lots of holes in the schedule for private meetings. And then Madison, Wisconsin, 8:30 Central Time, 9:30 Eastern Time tonight. So 3 battleground states in one day. President Trump, 2 battleground states in one day. North Carolina rally in Rocky Mount at 1 o'clock. And then he is in Green Bay at 7 Eastern with a guy goes by the name of Brett Favre. Is that how you pronounce it? Brett Favre. Just kidding. Tim Walz, Asheville and Greensboro, North Carolina. J.D. Vance is doing Joe Rogan. I doubt it will get 45 million views, but he's doing Joe Rogan.
60.
And then say again?
60.
Trump's up to 60? All right. Well, whatever
Awesome.
Trump's up to, I still don't think JD will get 45, but we'll see. Joe Rogan interview, and then is it Joe Rogan's not streaming today, is it? Do we know when that streams? I don't know. Anybody know?
I'll ask him.
All right, you ask. And then JD Vance is doing a town hall in Bedford, Pennsylvania, 5:30 Eastern Time, featuring former U.S. Representative, former Democrat Tulsi Gabbard, Hawaii 2. All right. This morning, the GDP figures came out. 104, please. These are very positive, and we'll talk about that. New York Times lead. Consumers are spending. Inflation is cooling, and the U.S. economy looks as strong as ever. So we'll talk about whether that is something that the Harris campaign can take advantage of. The big story breaking late last night, even as Democrats were continuing to fan the flames about what a comedian said, is what President Biden said. And we're going to look at it in a second. But first, a lot of the political press corps in the political world will be waiting to see what Kamala Harris says about it. We think we have some idea. And there's a little bit of a preview, I think, of what she's going to say based on looking what her number 2 said. This is Tim Walz on GMA 103.
The Republicans have seized on those remarks from President Biden yesterday, where they say he was calling Trump supporters garbage. He says he was talking about the comedian. What's your response to that? Did it step on the vice president's message?
Well, the president's clarified his remarks, but let's be very clear. The vice president and I have made it absolutely clear that we want everyone as a part of this. Donald Trump's divisive rhetoric is what needs to end. He called this a garbage country and continues on from the enemy within. What you heard Vice President Harris say and what I say is there's a place for all of us here. And I think that's the one. She's running for president. She's making the message. And she delivered that speech on the ellipse that showed what we can be as a country. So I think America knows the direction we're going. She's laid out a new way forward, and that's what we're going to do for the next 6 days and then the next 8 years after that.
All right, guys, we're going to watch the Biden thing in a second. We're going to watch a new Republican ad, but just your take on whether that's a good answer and one that Harris will likely replicate. I say yes, as good as it could be under the circumstances. Dan.
Yes, I agree. And I think maybe Harris might go a little step further and add a little Josh Shapiro and just say that Trump supporters are not garbage. And I think then pivot right off of it and say, I welcome everyone, as she said last night in her speech.
Yep. Sean.
Yeah, the answer isn't to me the problem, because if you get let's go to the question. Republicans have seized on this. What Republicans have seized on? Are you kidding me? That's like asking the Trump people, Democrats have seized on the comedian. No, that's not how that was framed. And then Stephanopoulos goes on, did he step on her message? No, no, no. Do you agree with that? Is that offensive? I mean, like, the double standard is so unreal. George Stephanopoulos might as well be on their payroll. That was ridiculous. Republicans have seized on this. Did he step on her message?
Yes, you're correct.
Tim Walz
John,
couldn't have screwed that up.
You're correct. All right. Now, Dave McCormick running for Senate in Pennsylvania, whether you think he should be elected or whether you think he will be elected, it's unambiguous. He's run a great campaign. He has been in his field operation, in his dealing with abortion and finessing Trump. He has hit a ton of marks, and that's why, along with spending a lot of money, why he's in a position to win. The other thing he's done is his ad team has been very nimble at reacting. And in fact, their Harris ad that came out shortly after she ascended, showing her past statements, is still seen in political circles as a very smart ad that the Trump people have tried to replicate. So this is a new ad. It's not on TV, but maybe it will be. A new digital video produced very quickly by the Dave McCormick team. 106, please.
They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
I would say in the case of Joe Biden, he has the kind of integrity that is uncommon. What I do want to say is I think he's someone who has the basic integrity you'd want in a public official.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
And the kind of integrity that you expect from a family member and a friend.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Clean up their mess on November 5th. Vote Republican. Vote Dave McCormick.
All right. Forget the McCormick ad. I'm going to watch Biden. So get ready to play 101. And I'll preview my Zapruder-esque view of this. The way he says supporters, the intonation of it sounds like doesn't mean one guy. He means everybody.
I'm
not
ready to
apostrophe.
roll, Mark, whenever you are. My apologies.
106. All right. Play 106, please.
They're good, decent, honorable people. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
I would say in the case of Joe Biden, he has the kind of integrity that is uncommon. What I do want to say is I think he's someone who has the basic integrity you'd want in a public official.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
And the kind of integrity that you expect from a family member and a friend.
The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters.
Clean up their mess on November 5th. McCormick.
This puts Biden back in the conversation. It revs up the base, and it also maybe forces reporters to ask about it. So do you think, Sean, we'll see other Republicans, whether they make videos or not, try to make this a talking point in down ballot races?
I think so. I mean, I think the idea of saying this is the Hillary deplorable thing. It gets people fired. Like, remember, it's about, at this point, it's about making sure your guys are out there knocking on doors, spending, making 10 extra phone calls. So this isn't about persuasion and bringing new people over as much as it is getting people over, to stay motivated, to stay fired up. Although I will tell you, last night, I had a couple folks that aren't big Trump supporters say, every time they feel like they're getting pushed to vote for Trump because of the other side, right? And I'm just telling you, I don't think that was, obviously I don't think anyone think that was helpful on either side, but I think that this is going to be just one more thing that pushes people who kind of felt like maybe I want to vote for Trump and just going, all right, that's it.
Dan, is this a down ballot thing?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just like Democrats are going to play up the comedian and Trump's, statements about enemies within. Absolutely. You will see this in ads up and down, and it's going to force Democratic candidates to have to answer this. And I think, again, Josh Shapiro hit a home run and did it the way I would recommend other Democrats do it.
All right. So again, my view of the Biden video, which we'll watch in a moment, please get ready with 101, is the way he said supporters sounds like he means multiple, but then he says his, which to me means he was trying to talk about the guy. So play 101, and then you guys can tell me what you think of it.
Puerto Rico, where I'm in my home state of Delaware, They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization is seen as unconscionable, and it's un-American.
So I see it both ways. Dan, what do you think he meant?
Oh, I think he meant his supporters. With all due respect to my fellow Democrats, I do not think he was just talking about the comedian. I mean, look, there's two things here. One is that, the signs of old age and loss of acuity are that you lose your filter and you get pretty blunt. And when I think of the last couple months, there are a few things that Joe Biden has said that have been helpful to Kamala Harris. I think this is just another instance. I also think, and it's really frustrating, I think it's what he believes. And I think we hear it on
of course, let's be clear. It's what almost every Democrat elected official in the country actually believes.
That is what I was going to be the rest of my sentence. I mean, look, we hear it on this platform, right? That, like, how could anyone vote for Donald Trump, and whether they think they're stupid or garbage. And so, just as the comics statement plays to a stereotype of Republicans that Democrats, are jumping all over because they think this is what the Democrats believe, this plays to the stereotype that Democrats are patronizing and condescending. And to your point, Mark, I think it's what Biden really believes. And it's hard to win the other side's voters when you have no respect for them. And that has been part of the problem the Democratic Party has had in the last 9 years, trying to break through to Trump supporters.
Sean.
Yeah, look, among the three of us, with all due respect to Dan and you, I have the most experience mangling words and screwing up on a public stage. So I will just say that, like, the idea that everybody rushed out and was like, here's what he meant. I mean, we played the video. He said it. He can say he didn't mean it. He can say that he screwed up. But to start to play the Tim Walz grammar game is insane. I mean, there's that's to me, it's not even a close call. You don't have to watch the tape. So I agree with Dan on this. I think that he's the uncle that's coming to Thanksgiving that says, Trump's crazy. I don't know how any of us could do this. How the heck could you support him? I mean, we see it every time. And this is, there's two sides of this, right? I mean, the folks on Trump team can't believe that you're voting for Harris. But this is, I don't think that there's any doubt he thinks this. He can't believe he's outraged that people could be voting for him. So,
all right.
What's the one reason?
I don't think that
Biden, the one reason Biden ran for re-election here was he detests Donald Trump. I mean, that is the
right. Well, but isn't the reason he ran in the first place?
And he thought he was the only one who could beat him.
Exactly.
Right. But that was the 2020 race too. He said the only reason I ran is because of Charlottesville. He didn't run because of policy. So I don't know why this is that shocking. But all
right. There's a ton of topics we want to get to. When we go to Q&A, Dan, you're getting in this conversation. The other Dan Olivo, because I can see how vociferously you feel about this. So get ready, Dan. You're coming in. We'll talk more about it. Let's quickly touch on some other things. Universal praise for her speech last night. The staging, the crowd size, her performance, the messaging. Dan, will it matter? It doesn't get very much coverage in the battleground states today. Does that speech matter to her chances of winning?
I hope so. I hope that it penetrates. The people who are undecided hear it. I mean, to your point, Mark, I thought from A to Z, it was excellent. I mean,
excellent. It was
the
excellent.
stagecraft was phenomenal. I mean, when you just look at a crowd of 70,000 kind of joyful people and the White House kind of, lit in the background versus the last time, when Trump spoke there, it was great symmetry. I thought, for the first time, like, that speech, I wish, is what we heard at the convention and have heard all fall. And to be charitable, a candidate running for president takes a couple months to kind of get their sea legs, fine tune a message.
Yeah.
So I hope that it resonates. And if nothing else, if she takes this message for the next week and is in 3 or 4 states a day and pounds away at this, it is the best I have heard from Kamala Harris this campaign.
I totally agree. And if that's her closing stump speech and she delivers it, I really think it appreciably helps her chances of winning.
Yes.
Sean.
I think the thing that I thought was interesting is, well delivered, sure. But I felt like it was every talking point that I've heard from her. There was nothing new, which I kind of felt like
That's called discipline. That's called discipline.
Fine. But what I'm saying is there was no tweak of, hey, I mean, there was nothing new. It was just the backdrop was different. I wish they had panned in a little closer to see Biden and watching it from the White House. I mean, I do think it is interesting that you literally did it at the White House and you've got the sitting president feet away and you kind of ignore, by the way, I'm getting breaking news. The JD Vance thing will, hold on, I'm being told it may come out this afternoon, though it might come out tomorrow morning.
That's very good breaking news.
Can I just say though to Sean's point about nothing new? The first thing that I actually heard that was new, that I was like, God, I wish we'd heard more of this, was for the first time she said, I'm just going to look here, that my instinct is to protect people who are treated unfairly and overlooked. It gets to me. I don't like it. It was like from the heart about why she's like who she is and what animates her.
Totally
In
agree.
the past, it's like I'm from a middle class family, and
Totally agree.
we all roll our eyes. But I finally heard a little bit, which we've heard from voters, they're screaming for, like, what do you care about? And that was great.
Yeah. Republican confidence, right? You see it in James Blair's interview in Semaphore, which I linked to in the daybook. You see it in the way the Trump folks talk about the Electoral College. And you see it in Twitter, where they're tweeting things like, rumors about the Harris campaign giving up on this state or that state, or Harris is yelling at the staff, or James Carville thinks they're going to lose. Like, there's all this disinformation out there to create this notion that Trump's going to win. Now, some Democrats are worried that that's about, if Trump loses, being able to say, well, of course it was stolen because we were so far ahead, which we told you before the election. Leaving that horror aside, Sean, inside a campaign, what's the cost benefit for them to be so overtly saying we're going to win, as opposed to the Harris people which say we're going to win, but it's going to be really close, and the Trump people are like, we're blowing this thing out?
Well, I would disagree that. I mean, I had James on the show last night.
Yeah, James hedges a little bit and says, "Do we not take anything for granted?" But the preponderant message from
but
Mar-a-Lago
you're seeing
is,
a lot of
we're
folks
winning
out there
this.
saying, "Yeah, look, you don't want to do it." Just to be clear, and you're seeing the people who are seeing it, who have been around the experience hand, saying, "Stop it! Do not discuss this. Pump the brakes." When that feeling happens, that's when people get that lazy. Don't knock on that extra door. Don't continue to make the phone calls. So you don't want that attitude to be pervasive throughout a campaign. And I think you're seeing the more experienced hands pump the brakes. But I will say that look at the polls, even in Politico today, every state poll minus, I think it was Michigan or North Carolina, showing Trump continue to trend. The problem is there's so much public data that I think people are starting to buy it and to say, hey, we're watching Trump up. We're seeing these early vote numbers. I will say what worried me, though, as a Trump supporter, Political story out today about the disproportionate number of women that are voting early, right?
Yeah.
And that was like, oh my, like, so, again, we all know, we can all read tea leaves. Even if Republicans are, quote, voting early, you don't know how many of them are pissed off Republicans, right? So, or Trumpers.
Every percentage of the contributions to the vote that are women, that above 52%, makes it more likely that she wins. And if it gets to 55, of course, it's over. Dan,
yeah,
what do you think about the confidence?
I think the top of the ticket, Trump himself does not do, it's really close and we need to, he is all.
But what Trump does do is say, we got to win it big, keep knocking on doors, because if we win it so big, they can't steal it.
Of course, but he has to say, I'm leading in every single state. I'm up big time, right? Like, it's just kind of his MO a little bit. But I think, Mark, to your point, like, there are some signs, not only that are women voting at a very high number. Democrats believe that their low propensity voters, women of color, like young women of color, are turning out at very high rates. Now, not every state kind of breaks down the demographic, but the other thing is the suburbs so far are turning out at a huge rate. And Democrats believe that the key to their road to victory is going to run through those suburbs of Philadelphia, Detroit, Atlanta, as it was in 20, as it was in 22. Now, we don't know what those people are voting for, but Democrats believe that the high number of women turning out is good news for them. And they also believe that what we're calling the bro vote, young men who don't have a history of turning out a lot, so far, they're not seeing that turnout. And the fact that the Trump campaign isn't saying we are seeing that turnout tells me that there's truth. Doesn't mean they won't turn out on election day, But so far, there are some, quietly some good signs for Democrats.
Dan, what do you make of the economic numbers, the positive GDP figures, and whether the campaign can use that?
Look, you'd always rather have good numbers than bad numbers. And I think at the same time, kudos to Elon Musk. I don't say that very often. And Howard Lutnick, the co-chair of the Trump transition, who both in the last 24 hours have said that, yes, Trump is going to put all these tariffs in place. Yes, there may be short-term pain. Their argument is it will lead to, better long-term solutions or outcomes, I should say. But the fact that you are hearing these people say tariffs will cause pain, likely inflation, and then there's a story in the Post today that companies, as they have to do, they have a fiduciary to their to their customers and to their shareholders, are readying price increases to offset tariffs. And the fact that this is going public from Trump supporters, along with good economic news under the Democrats, is good for Harris.
While Sean responds, put up 105, please.
Yeah, I would just say that, just remember, it depends on your eye of the beholder. The CNBC headlines were not fantastic for their campaign. It says less than expectations. I've said this before, I'll say it again. Economic and crime data is a gut, visceral stuff. So you cannot say, guess what? Did you see the economic news? You're doing better. You either personally feel you're doing better or not. And so I agree with Dan. It never hurts to have positive news to tout. But at the end of the day, to tell somebody who's going to the grocery store, I know bananas are higher and eggs are higher and you're paying more for lemons and beef and all that. But don't worry, we just got a new government report. Is not how it works. It's like George H.W. Bush at the scanner. You are defying what people are feeling in their gut and what they're seeing at the cash register. So yes, it's better than bad news, but it's not going to change people's feeling about what they think in their personal lives, the economy and or safety is happening.
The one thing, Sean, though, because I completely agree with you, I think in most people's gut, they don't think tariffs are good.
Yeah, but I don't look. Yeah. I don't disagree with you. I think that when you start explaining, hey, you're going to put a tariff, but if that's where you are right now, right, I think you've picked your side. If you're into like the idea that you're thinking long term, like, hey, you know what? If these tariffs go in and there's an additional cost and that's going to trickle down. I mean, like, I just don't think that's how voters calculate. And by the way, President Trump, because that's what he'll be called at that point, the 47. I mean, like, if you're basically saying, gosh, you're going to have buyer's regret at some point. Okay, well, we'll deal with that down the road. But I think for now, I'll just take the win.
All right. Welcome in Norvilla and Dan. We're going to get to you in a second. If you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. Delighted to have you both. You're both labeled, I hope correctly. Norvilla, you're a Trump supporter?
That's correct.
Where do you live?
I live in Virginia.
Okay. And Dan, you're a Harris supporter and you live where? All right. Norvilla, you start. What did you think of what President Biden said, please?
Well, I believed him. I mean, he said what he said, called us garbage, and I believe him. Okay. I mean, it's very simple.
All right, Dan's going to explain the alternative point of view because I saw him shaking and nodding. Dan, what do you think President Biden's comment is about?
Well, I think he literally meant, the people that were saying the nasty things at the rally, and that's it. I mean, Biden engaged with Trump supporters, I think, at an event where he put on a Trump hat. So to say that, he feels this way about, half of the American people is absolutely ridiculous, and it's just, I don't know. Trump has a deplorable moment every single day. And we just say, oh, Trump's being Trump. That's just who he is. It's just absolute. And I respect all three of you. And Dan, I mean, I don't know what, I don't know what else to say, but that was, I don't know.
All right. Norvilla, what's on your mind, please?
So I couldn't vote for Trump in 2016 because I was not a legal citizen yet. I'm an immigrant from St. Lucia in the Caribbean. But in 2019, I became a legal citizen. That's after 8 years of waiting. So immigration is a huge issue for me. It's not fair that people can just walk across the border, get free stuff, and I had to work hard. I had to wait. And so I voted. I was in New York in 2020, so I didn't even bother voting for him, but I wanted to. And this year I voted early for him in Virginia. What's on my mind is whatever happened to safe, legal, and rare for abortion. We are now full throttle, let's kill our kids, like let's have the ability to kill our kids throughout all 9 months. Like, what's going on in America? Like, it's so sad. I mean, not all women, even if like so many women are going out to vote, that doesn't necessarily mean that we all want abortion and we're all casting our vote for Kamala Harris because we want abortion. Like, that's not the case. I have very many friends around here and they're all voting for Trump. So
Okay. Well, we're glad you're here in America with us. Thank you for coming and
I'm
being
glad
so
to be here. It's
so
an
patient.
amazing country. It really is.
Dan, respond to it if you would. You can pass if you want, but respond to what you said about abortion, and then we'd love to hear what's on your mind.
Oh, we completely disagree. I don't want to get too far into it. I think it's a woman's choice. I have an 8-year-old daughter, and the laws, going the way they are. I worry for her. If anything were to happen to her. So I think it's between a woman, her doctor, her family, and that's it. And like Tim Wall says, mind your own business.
Okay, Dan, what's on your mind?
Well, I feel good about the race. I think Kamala's going to win convincingly. That's just the way I feel about it. I think women are going to come out in droves, and I wasn't feeling too good about it a couple weeks ago because, you listen to the media and you get influenced. But I really think that it's going to turn out well. So I'm very confident she's going to win.
Dan, can you explain why Donald Trump has so much support? What is it about Donald Trump or about the country that allowed him to win so much support?
I think he's a great salesman and a brander, and he's selling what people want to say. His supporters. He's giving them permission to say what they want to say and how they feel, and he's very good at it.
And what do you make of
when he won in 2016? I was completely against him. It was the first time that election night. I'm anti-gun, and it was the first time I ever thought I might want to, own a gun. I got over that, and I said, "Listen, if this guy can just change his direction, he can be a great president." He never changed.
Okay, Norvilla, why do you think Kamala Harris has so much support?
I mean, based on the abortion issue, I think people got scared after Roe v. Wade got reversed, and that's really the issue. Hi, sweetie.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I also think people are afraid. Unfortunately, we have a lot of people saying bad things about Trump. It started when he even, came down the escalator at Trump Tower. So people just believe the news. It's getting less and less now, but that's just the case,
All right, we're all incredibly pro baby here, and we love that baby. How old is that baby?
He is 10 months old.
Oh, he could not be cuter. Look at that. What's his name?
Brandon.
Brandon, you're so super cute. Sean.
Norvilla, can I just ask what section of Virginia do you live in? Just, I don't want to give away any like personal data.
7.
I'm sorry?
District 7, I think. Derek Anderson.
Okay,
Vindman.
Sort of Northern Virginia.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
When you talk about like your friends, are they fellow immigrants? I'm just trying to get a sense when you say that my friends agree. Is it people who are like you and their moms, they're immigrants, or is it, I'm just trying to get a sense. Is it that they're voting for Trump or that they're also moms, they're all female? Like, obviously, is it male, female? Like when you say friends, can you be more specific, and what's the issue that you think is shared with them?
Yeah. So, I ran a young adult group around here. It's not only immigrants. Some of them are moms, some of them are just young adults that are trying to find their way. And they are positively horrified of a possibility of Kamala Harris being our next president. We were much better off.
Gender and it's just it's more of a young thing than it is.
Oh yeah. I think we were much better off under Trump. Everybody was we had a lot more money in our pockets. We could buy houses, that kind of stuff matters for young people. And, a lot of people just don't have the breathing room now to do stuff that were easier under Trump. So that's why we're kind of supporting him. And she's very extreme. We know that from her record in California. And I do have Black friends up in PA actually, and they are very excited to vote for Trump. And one of my friends told me that her Black family, who have been lifelong Democrats down in Florida, are voting for Trump. And she was like super surprised that was happening. So I think I'm hoping that the anecdotal evidence in my life is going to show that Trump is going to win next week. I'm really hoping that, but that's just what's been going on the ground for me. So
okay, hold on one second. I'll just say about Florida, because I don't think we've talked about it here. Every indication I have is that Florida is going to be a massive blowout. And so that's going to have an impact on people's thoughts about the future of what once was a battleground state, but also the the popular vote. And for those who are raising the possibility that Trump will win the popular vote, he's going to get an enormous number of votes out of Florida.
Yep.
Dan, do you have a question for either other Dan?
Yeah, I have a question, Dan, for you. What do you make of Harris's closing message here, focusing on Trump and the dangers that he poses?
I mean, it's got to get pointed out. I love it. I love it. And I love that she's, bringing people together like Liz Cheney and all that. I think we need to come together. The whole, I can't quote her directly, but a seat at the table, the contrast. I love it. I want to work, I want a president that wants to work with the other side. The border bill, that Trump tanked, I'm all for it. We need to come together. And I think she's delivering that message. And I think that's going to put her over the top.
Dan, I'd love for you two to do one more thing before you go. Dan, tell, if you want to pass, I'm not going to, obviously can't force you to do it, but tell Norvilla how you think, and then Sean will get back in. Tell Norvilla how you think she should handle it if Harris wins. What would be your advice to her to how to cope with that?
Oh, I'm hoping that like her, like everyone else, we could just all come together and, just disagree about policy.
Yeah. And Norvella, what would be your advice for Dan if Trump wins?
I'd say just think back on the golden days when he was president again. You're not going to die. We're all going to be okay. And yeah, the initial shock is going to wear out, and your life is going to move on.
All right, Sean, do you have something for these two?
Yeah, I just want to say, Dan, first, I want to start with a common ground. Go Dodgers. I never thought
easy to be for the Dodgers now.
Oh, no. As soon as the Yankees advanced, I was for whomever, fill in the blank. So it's not I'm renting the Dodgers fandom. I will give it up as soon as they beat the Yankees. That's how we live in Red Sox Nation. But would you answer Novella's question? Because I think it was a Democrat, Bill Clinton, that coined the phrase. What happened to safe, rare, and legal? What you mentioned your daughter. I mean, there's a shift now. It's openly like at any time, any place. I think she articulated extremely well.
I don't think that's the reality of it. I mean, the numbers don't say that. No one's having end of term abortions. It's just the numbers are not there.
But why not just say, hey, we want to protect the right, but we want it to still be safe, rare, and legal. It's now changed to I want it full on anytime.
Well, I'm going to join my fellow Dan here. That is not, I mean, I maybe 5 or 10% of Democrats feel that way, but
hold on. When asked the question, when rarely they're asked, why not just say fine, then no third trimester? I mean, there's no, Democrats won't even commit to a timetable.
Yeah, because I think the big issue is not somebody had fun on a Friday night and 8.5 months into it, they're like, yeah, you know what, let's end this and let's go to Chick-fil-A for lunch. It is often a health decision, some new variable has entered the equation. The mother's health, the baby's health, life, that forces what is, I think, 90% of Americans would say is a brutally painful decision that, as my fellow Dan said, is private. It's between the doctor and the woman. And I think I hear you, Sean. Historically, winning terrain for Republicans is the end of the trimester, and people who have historically used abortion as essentially birth control. And I think, to Bill Clinton's point, that is where most people are. It should be rare, but it should be legal. And legal now is not the case for about half the country. And that is where I think it's just, let's go there. And then, to your point, Sean, the next conversation I think will be, what limits should there be? And I think most people are open to that conversation.
Well, again, I respect your opinion. I don't think Democrats can answer that question, though. That we used to have that discussion. We used to have a bipartisan discussion about partial birth abortion, about certain things, and now it's we want it all. We'll decide, and I think we've lost.
Well, let me ask you this, Sean: Would Republicans be willing to say it should be legal? And now let's talk about under what circumstances.
I think you'd find a lot more common ground. I agree with. I think I'm a pro-life guy, but I think you'd find more of a willingness to have a discussion.
Fill the ship. Hold on.
Next Thursday's episode, abortion.
Dan, quick closing comment. Please be quick because we want to get Jessica and Michael in.
No, it made me think, if when this comes up, conversation comes up with my wife, she's like, well, why can't men take a pill, or why can't men,
Yes, that's true. All right, Dan, thank you for joining. Come back regularly. Norvilla, come back regularly. You don't always have to bring your son, but it's our preference.
Oh, thank you very much.
Right.
I do want to say, though, that when I was 16, I found out that my mom almost aborted me because she was 16 when she was pregnant with me. And if she had gone through with the decision, I wouldn't be here and my son wouldn't be here. So we're talking about human beings here. And we should provide for mothers. We should provide for their families to be able to welcome new life. We should try not to make it so easy to just make such a horrible decision is what I'm saying. Anyway, have a good day. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you. Please come back. We loved having you on. All right. Michael Bix is a Harris supporter who lives in New Hampshire, the mega state, the battleground of New Hampshire. Jessica, tell folks who don't know where you live as a Trump supporter.
I live in Virginia, in the Tidewater area of Virginia.
Yeah. And tell folks what's on your mind today, and then Michael will do the same.
I wanted to make a comment about the New York Times article that you referenced at the top of the program. And I feel like just to say that the economy looks as strong as ever. I mean, it might look that way for folks that are retired pulling from a 401k, but for, most middle class folks, at least that I know, I mean, it just seems really out of touch to say something like that. And I think it's been a really tough 4 years for everybody that I know. And when people that are having to sell belongings on, like Facebook Marketplace to pay for Christmas gifts for their kids this year, it's almost like a slap in the face.
Thank you.
I think Democrats that are saying it's the greatest ever. I look, I think this is the balance that's trying to be struck is it's not as bad as Trump would lead you to believe, in the sense that statistically it's not horrible. It's not. But to Sean's point, and for millions of Americans, it is not good. And I think that is where Harris has tried to kind of strike. Biden couldn't get past it. It was just, we're better than the rest of the world. Here are all the things I did that, made it less bad. And why can't you be grateful? Which was the most tone-deaf, ridiculous thing to try to argue. And Harris is trying to say, like, I hear you and I feel you. And for your tens of millions of people, that is absolutely right. But on the other hand, it is not horrible. But to your point, it's not good for a lot of people.
Michael Bix.
Yeah, I want to disagree with Dan. I mean, I don't think, that Joe Biden actually thinks that they're garbage. And certainly, listen, I'm as strong a Democrat as there is. And the fact that 50% of the country feels left behind by the culture, feels that basically there's not a place for them at the table. I mean, you can't view those folks as garbage. In other words, Trump's support is totally understandable. I mean, he's a grifter, and the fact that he's the one that's basically selling that message is sort of crazy. But his message, I mean, makes sense. But I on the other, yeah, and the notion, I mean, Joe Biden, the reason I voted for him the last time is because I thought he would be the one person who could actually, sort of cross the divide. And my question to both of you is, do you think either one of these candidates is going to be able to do anything about polarization? I mean, told my kids in 2000, Biden's going to finally stop this. If anybody could, it'd be him, and he couldn't do it. I mean, do you guys see any end to this?
Yeah, I mean, look, Dan, I'll go first just because you talked to me about Biden. I think both your statements are true, which is I do believe that Joe Biden is a good, decent person. And I think most people see him. But I also think he's just disgusted by Trump, and he cannot square in his head that Trump may win again. And I think, does he think that they're all actual garbage deplorables? No. But I think that he's so frustrated and he can't understand why people could ever vote for him. And he used the term garbage. But the problem is he has not, and a lot of Democrats have not, stepped back and asked the question, why does Trump resonate with so many people? They're willing to wait in line, stand in the rain, attend rallies, door knock, put up signs, run over the hot coals for him. It's not racism and these kind of things that you heard Democrats like pat themselves on the back to explain it away. It's raw, cold policy outcomes that they think he's fighting for that others do not speak for. That's why he defeated Jeb Bush, everybody. So I think both are true. Good person, pretty decent guy, but very frustrated and he can't understand it.
See, I don't think it's policy. I think it's about the culture. I mean, I think that there is this focus, and I'm all for trans rights, but whether it's trans rights, gay, you just look at the internet and there are people who feel completely left behind by the culture. And more than anything, I don't think it's any policy proclamation because his policies, if you look at them, they do help the rich. But there's this sense that the culture is leaving a large chunk of the nation behind and that there's not a place for them at the table.
But Dan, go back to 2016.
Yes.
He was against immigration and he was called basically, not a Nazi, but a racist. He is now, it is almost mainstream, right? The country is now wrestling with, to what extent do we deal with the immigration problem? He was against the wars when it was totally unpopular. And when he said in South Carolina that Iraq was a mistake, everyone was like, that's it, he's done, right? Jeb Bush is going to mow him down. It's a huge number of military retirees. He wins 80% of the vote in South Carolina. He was against trade when everybody had moved to the Reagan, Bill Clinton, free trade is good, open. It was all policy. It was all policy. And that is because people said, A, he said it, and B, he's not apologizing when people say that, the Wall Street Journal editorial page and all the intelligentsia is like, you can't do this. And he's like, screw you. I can do it, and I'll bring the gun to the fight, and I'll kick your ass. And he took everybody on, and he never apologized, and he got some outcomes. And I'll just say this lastly, because this fires me up, this whole conversation. There is a member of Congress, a Democrat from Michigan. I will not say her name because I don't believe this call was public. And she said that union members in her state right now, totally for Trump. And she said that Democrats belittled changes to NAFTA. Oh, all he did was nibble around the edges. He didn't really change anything. And she said the union Democrats said to her, but what did your party try to do? He said he would do something. He did something. Was it 100% change? No. Was it 10% is better than nothing? What have you done to fight for our jobs every day? This is a Democratic congresswoman who badly wants Donald Trump defeated. All policy. And the attitude
look,
screw you.
I think that Dan just explained this probably better than anyone I've heard in the last 8 years. I had somebody very, very close to me in the 2016 election say, Donald Trump's the first politician that said, I'm going to get your job back, right? We'd heard about retraining and I'm going to help get you educational benefits. You don't, whether you believe it or not, whether he did or not, that's not the point. The point is he spoke to people in a way that was so untraditional. And as a guy that admittedly, I'm still a party guy. I believe in the parties. I believe in, Republican tenets. But Donald Trump said, I'll break glass. I'll do things differently. I'm willing to challenge the status quo. I tell people this all the time. I mean, I was the assistant U.S. trade rep. I talked about how great these trade deals were. And then I had to stand at the podium and talk and have people quote me to me and say, you said 8 years ago that these deals were great. And I had to say, well, I guess I was wrong. And but he basically, and it wasn't just rhetoric. Trump, I remember when we were talking about NAFTA and I said, hey, look, legally it's what we call enforced. He goes, I don't care. The deal sucks. And I was like, who talks like that? And he was like, I'm just going to call Trudeau and we're going to say that in Obrador and say that we're renegotiating. And he did. And I was like, no one does that. And I think there was a set. And so anyway, I think that to me, there is something that is different. And with respect to Biden, I agree with Dan. I don't like, he doesn't, I almost feel like he should say, I don't like, there's a difference between Trump voters and Trump supporters. And that's the distinction that I think Biden's making is if you vote for Trump, I kind of get why you're voting for him, or maybe you're pissed about policy, but I don't think that for some people, we see this on this platform. If you're a diehard supporter, you don't understand with all the data that I have for my team, how can you be a supporter of the other team, right? That's the difference between a voter and a supporter. I think that's what Biden was saying last night. I don't think he meant to say it, but I do think he believes it. And then lastly, I will just say to the nut of your question, Michael, I wish I could give you more hope, but I don't see either side. I think Kamala Harris is saying talking points. I'm going to be the president for both people. If she were to get elected in 10 seconds, she would be going back to the 2019 version of who she campaigned, her campaign, which is all these progressive causes because she wants to get reelected. I think that's who she truly is at her core. She'll cater to the base. She'll cater to the progressive wing. And I don't think that Trump will look for common ground either, to be honest with you. I think he's going to...
He'll go to 2025.
Huh?
He'll project 2025. He'll wrap his arms around it just like she will 2019.
No, I mean, well, look, that's a great
Come on. I mean, if you're going to go down that road with her, you got to go down the other road.
No, I'm saying that, well, look, will Trump cater to the right? Yeah, but I mean, I think each person is going to go to their corner. And I don't think that that's surprising. I will say this, if you're looking for any glimmer in the future, I think it's going to take a second-term president who is willing to say, I don't care anymore. There's certain things that I'm going to do, but you're not going to see it with a first-term president or Trump. I mean, Trump will be, he'll have a second first term, but I just don't see this happening anytime soon in our politics. So
Jessica, you have sat so patiently and quietly. Is there anything? And Michael, I love the passion, man. I could chat all day here. Jess, I
just wanted to add one other thing. So I have, I have friends who are Democrats who identify as liberal. And, in the conversations that we have, I've had one of them say to me, she lives in Minnesota, and she's told me that, she hates Trump with every fiber of her being. She agrees. I mean, she loves Walz. But she said that she cannot afford to be a Democrat in this economy. She's a stay-at-home mom of 4 and, is struggling to feed her family. So I think that, Trump, I don't know many people in my circle that actually really like his personality, but I'm just looking to be able to take care of my family. And I think a lot of people feel that way, but I think it says a lot when people say, I hate Trump, I can't stand him, but I have to be able to feed my family.
Yep.
I think by the way, and I know, like, as a guy who loves to preach about data, anecdotally, I hear that story over and over and over again. I don't like him. I don't like his personality. Blah, blah, blah. I can't believe I'm saying this, but ... I'm going to vote for him because of the economy or whatever. And again, it's anecdotal. It's like how many yard signs you see going down a street. It doesn't mean anything. But I will say, as a Trump supporter in the last 8 years, normally the conversation went like this: "Hey, can I talk to you privately in a soundproof room?" And suddenly people are willing to say this, like, "I know there's a lot of people around us, but I want to tell you something." The dynamic has shifted where more and more people are comfortable making it very clear, I'm voting for Trump. So,
Love this program. Love you guys. This has been so great, and I think we really need more
all right,
platforms
let's
like
turn
this.
Virginia red. Thanks, appreciate it.
And
Can we
thank you,
bring in
Michael.
Henry?
Seriously, thank you for coming on and your passion, and I love it. And you represent tens of millions of people. Like, you seriously. And Jessica,
Hopefully, Jessica, you represent about 77 million people.
yeah.
Can we bring in? I want to bring in Harry. He is an independent in Pennsylvania. So of all people, like, this is someone who I think has probably got. By the way, I want to just say this: if God willing, we're doing this in 4 years. Somebody gave me a great idea when I was in Arizona, Dan, and they said, I wish I had saved all they were a swing voter. Their household had a registered Republican, a registered Democrat. And they said the pile of mail in the last 2 weeks. And I said, we should do an experiment on the morning meeting where we ask people to save the mail that comes to their house. And we start, showing it off. So, and Henry's the perfect person because he's an independent. Henry, where are you in Pennsylvania?
So Montgomery County, Philadelphia suburbs.
You are ground zero.
You are. You could probably invite them to your house and they both come.
Yeah. So, and my wife is a poll worker too. So she works the polls every year for every election and has been for a long time.
Well, bravo to her for doing that.
Yeah.
Tell us, where are you on this election, and what have you done in the past as an independent?
Yeah, so a little history. So I've been a lifelong Republican up until about 2019, 2020. And frankly, just kind of got tired of the rhetoric and the going away from the traditional conservative Republican values. So respect everybody's opinion and how they want to vote and all that. I never try to change anyone's position. I like having dialogue, although I have to admit the dialogue lately is less and less because people just don't seem to want to talk about the issues. And I really enjoy tuning in on this platform, although I will say that I don't go into the chat anymore because I felt that it kind of had gotten a bit toxic. But I'm kind of a guy who's like Admiral McCraven. In fact, I would have loved to have seen him run for office. I loved his op-ed on the 28th in the Wall Street Journal. So a lot of his feelings are how I truly feel about the election. I have 2 daughters, 23 and 20. Just visited both of them, one in Boston, one in DC. The one in DC actually works at the White House. She does tours, works for the National Park Service at the Visitor Center. So, and again, I have conservative values, but I decided to become an independent. I'm in the middle. We have a lot of controversy in my area. My wife is a building substitute high school teacher. Our school board in our area, you may have seen some of the things. We have a guy on the school board who's a member of the 3 Percenters. He made some lewd comments about Vice President Harris and other people on social media. So that has become very controversial in our area. So I'm voting for Harris primarily because I feel I don't agree with all of her policies. In fact, I don't agree with, a few, more than a few, but I feel she right now is the more stable hand. I will admit that if Nikki Haley was the nominee, I would have seriously considered voting for her. I don't think I would have voted for DeSantis if he was, but I would consider Haley. I think the party made a big mistake. So another reason why I'm voting for Harris is I hope to see a reset of the Republican Party. I am hoping that if Vice President Harris does become our president, that Senators Thune, Barrasso, Ernst, Shelley, Kaplan-Moore, they kind of take back the party and try to get it back going in the direction that I feel it should be. So those are my thoughts.
Thank you. I mean, I think you and Jessica on before, you are that push pull, right? You don't necessarily care for Harris's policies in aggregate, but you don't like Trump's conduct, and she doesn't like Trump's conduct, but likes Trump's policies, and that push and pull. My only question for you is, you're assuming your friends in Montgomery County are somewhat similar. What is your sense? Are they equally divided, or more people leaning Harris?
Yeah, great question. So in my area where I live, our township and our general area, it's very Trump, very MAGA in my area. So I'm talking about my neighborhood area, you know, within about maybe 10 square miles or so. Once you get outside of that, then it's a mix. If I go north, up 476, it's heavy Trump country, you know, the Northeast, North Central, that's definitely is very red, very, very MAGA, very Trump. But in, you know, the closer you get to the Philly burbs in Montgomery County, it's primarily, you see more Harris signs than you do Trump signs. So, yeah, and Sean, I'm happy to go out to my dumpster. The trash goes out tonight if you want me to haul in all the ads that I've put in there just this week since I got back from DC yesterday.
I wasn't sure where you were going with that for a second.
Yeah, I was like, when you said dumpster, I was a little concerned.
Yeah, but enjoy the show, and like I said, I like seeing other people's opinions as long as it stays civil. And you know, and I agree with what Mark said. You know, when this election's over, I mean, I'm preparing myself either way. You know, whoever wins, it's like we got to get down to business. I'm more supportive of politicians who really, you know, want to like work with people. And like in Penn, you know who I would love to have seen for Speaker of the House? I would have loved to see Brian Fitzpatrick. My daughter, when she was in high school, she was on Madeline Dean's high school advisory board and Brian Fitzpatrick's at the same time. She wanted to experience both. And I think those are two people that are very credible. But from a Republican standpoint, I think Brian would have been a great speaker.
Thank you.
So can I ask, have you voted early?
I did. I did mail in, and the only way I'm going to stand in line in my area, like I said, kind of what it is about is I'm going to visit my wife, and I will take her lunch and dinner, and I will go in and out of the elementary school. But I'm not going to. It's too extreme in our area, and I just don't want to deal with that. I'll spend some time reading one of my books.
I've asked a lot of people, like, do you feel like in Montgomery County that there's a lot of people who share your sentiment, or is it going one way or the other?
When you say my sentiment, can you be more specific?
Like you were talking about how frustrated you were with Trump and that you had sort of voted Republican in the past. Is that something that you find a lot of your neighbors equally sharing, or is it when you go down the street, there's more Trump signs or more Harris signs?
Yeah, well, I will tell you that I'm an avid golfer since I retired. And there's 5 guys that I golf with on a regular basis, you know, weekly. And all of us are Republicans, and mainly in the last couple elections, we voted for the Democratic candidate. But I think it's just mixed. In our area, my neighborhood, it's more, you know, our district is kind of more Republican and more MAGA. But the closer you get out into the Philly suburbs, I'm like 35 miles outside of Philadelphia.
How about the Senate race?
That's interesting. I think based on what I'm seeing and reading, and I do have a family member that's an executive with the PA Democratic Party, it's very close.
Who are you voting for?
For the Senate?
Yeah.
Casey. I'm not a McCormick guy. I appreciate his service and everything. I'm just not a McCormick guy.
What can you explain?
And I don't like all his financial ties. over the years, and I don't like the fact that he's kind of not a real, like a true Pennsylvania guy. He's a Connecticut guy. So I respect his service. And my dad was a World War II veteran, greatest generation, 9 assaults on beaches in the South Pacific. He was in Okinawa, Guadalcanal, all that stuff. So I respect the military stuff. And also, I speaking of which, I agree with the generals. Okay, all the generals and what they've said. I put my trust there.
Okay. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
Dan, thanks to your father. Yep.
Thank you.
Dan, any thoughts before we wrap up and make some?
I can't believe the election is now less than a week away. This is
most
coming.
people are ready to throw the mail out. I'm like, oh, I get so excited when I see it come in. Hold on.
Man, elections are like Christmas Day. I mean, I love it. No, I looking forward to tomorrow. Looking forward to see what the new day brings. For those interested, tune in tonight at 6 for Mark's show. He has a very special guest tonight, Paul Manafort, who ran for part of Trump's 2016 campaign, ran it. No doubt he will have interesting things to say. And Mark will also recount, obviously, all the day's news, and no doubt he'll have plenty of content. Sean, who do you have on today? What are you looking at?
So this is our last road. By the way, we had James Blair, the political director, last night. We ran through all the states, which I thought was cool. But then I did all 4 tier 2 states. So if you're interested in that, you can go check it out from last night. But then tonight we do our last road to 270. We'll go through every state. I'm fixated on Nebraska. I've gotten a lot of mail about where Nebraska is. So I've done a lot of research in talking to folks there. By the way, John Robinson it is. I think I couldn't see your thing anymore. You're trying to hold up a sign. Use a Sharpie, brother. I was trying to read it for you. So come back, and if you're trying to show us something, we gotta get a better marker. Yeah. So we've got our last road to 270 today at 6. So you want to watch Mark live? Just watch us on YouTube after the fact. But we'll go through every single state in the District of Columbia with the latest data where we are. And then I will tease this now because I got to be careful what I say, because I always feel like it's like carrying an umbrella when it's raining. You want to. But I believe we have a very special guest for Friday's show, which you and Mark will be on, and it'll come right. He will come right before you. So just FYI, little tease there.
I look forward to it. And yes, I see in the chat tomorrow is Halloween.
Oh yeah, I know. So wear your costume. That will get you called on.
Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the day.
Have a great one.